We are live.
What's up? Welcome into Inside Carolina Premier Live podcast on Tuesday nights at 9 o'clock. It's on to be live. Three-person show tonight. Ross Martin, producer John Bauman, and I'm your host, Tommy Ashley, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. All right, boys, it's on to beat live Tuesday. Ross, have you recovered from your West Coast swing?
Yes, I'm here and healthy.
It is. I saw a reporter ask a question to Mac Brown on Sunday from Portland, and he was at the press conference on Monday at 11 o'clock or thereabouts in Keenan Stadium, um, pulling red eyes to get back from Mac Brown. It is championship week. Good to have Ross back. Adam preparing to go to Indiana to cover Carolina and Indiana on, I guess, Wednesday night, 9:15 from Assembly Hall. John Bauman, I'm going to let you start first because in your Slack to us, you said, I've got a lot of hot takes tonight. So, Ross, I'm going to let him start it. What do you think? Let's
Sure,
go.
take it.
Well, I joined the show 2 weeks ago. I haven't watched any UNC sports since. Has anything changed in the last 2 weeks with the Carolina football and basketball teams? It feels like everything has changed
I
since
will
I've
say
last
this.
been on the show.
Judging from the press conference, nothing's really changed. Monday football press conferences, ACC championship games coming up. They're in it. But anyway, I digress. I'll let you start it, though. Hot take us in. Come on. Where's the flames? Everything.
I started the show 2 weeks ago by pulling up the college football playoff tracker on 538. I don't think that's necessary tonight. But there's still a tremendous opportunity in front of this UNC football team. Another thing that I talked about 2 weeks ago is that this is the UNC football team's window. In sports, even in life, your window to accomplish your goals is a lot shorter than you think it is. And I think this UNC football team has had a special season so far. It kind of took a nosedive in the last 2 weeks, but they still have an opportunity to do something very special on Saturday night in Charlotte. And I don't know if they're going to get, there's been a lot of talk about next year already with Drake May returning, but I don't know if they're going to get this same shot next year, looking at how the ACC is setting up. So I think this is a huge opportunity for the Carolina football program to take its shot at winning an ACC football championship against a Clemson team that is not as strong as they have been historically. That's my hot take to start out the night.
Go ahead, Ross.
I mean, I don't know why that was a hot take. It sounds like Mac Brown.
Hey, I don't disagree with you, John. I think, and I've said it for the last couple of weeks. I think they let some opportunities slip through the fingers in the last 2 weeks on the football field. But hey, 9-3. Everybody on this podcast would have said absolutely. I believe I had 10-2. I was the only one. I think a couple people had 9-3. But Carolina's playing Clemson, so you're right. The opportunity's there to win the ACC championship in the last year of divisions. Max said on Monday he was one of three coaches that voted against divisions for various reasons, but one reason that changing it, Ross, is going to be it's going to be a lot tougher for North Carolina to get to the ACC championship because now, not only do you have to beat 6 coastal teams, you got to beat the 14 other ACC teams to get in 1 and 2. So a big chance, like John said. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, everything John said is right. It's a great opportunity. But I think the fact that we're comparing what we expected out of this team based on what we said in August, I think that's the wrong way to look at it. Standards change, and the standard for this team changed once we figured out how good Drake May was, and with Josh Downs, I think the standard for this team changed. So I don't think we shouldn't be letting them off the hook for losses to Georgia Tech and State. Those are 2 games they should have won, and they blew it. So this team should be 11-1, and I don't really know what happened. Something's off with the offense. I think it's fair to say that other teams have gotten enough tape on Drake now. That might be one reason teams are. And look, State's defense is great. Top 20 in most of the meaningful categories. But both those games they should have won. especially Georgia Tech, and both at home too, which is that's kind of demoralizing to win. They're limping into the season. There's no real limping into the championship game. There's no other way to put it. I think fans are very disappointed about how they ended the season because, like John said, this is the window. Like you said, Tommy, it's gonna be harder to get in the championship game moving forward because you have to beat Florida State, Clemson, other teams that improve. I'm trying to think who else has been good recently.
Louisville's been good. Wake won't be good next year without Hartman.
Yeah, it's ebbs and flows. There'll be other good teams that are going to be in UNC's way, and they had an easy path in the Coastal, and they got to the championship game twice. And the window with Drake, just like it was with Sam, there's a small window you have with these great guys. With Josh Downs too. I mean, this is going to be his last couple games. So, yeah, I mean, it would be a great to beat Clemson. I think you would kind of be able to flip the script here late, and it'd be good to get to 10 wins with a win over Clemson. Then you have the Orange Bowl, a chance for 11 wins. That would be a really, really good season. But there's no way to. They did blow it, I think, because Georgia Tech and State, and I don't think it's kind of you're kind of lying to yourself if you think they ended that they've ended the season any other way.
Yeah, that's what we talked about it. I heard Schottmer talk about it in calling the shots with you, and I tried to talk about it a little Monday. Is that once you get to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 1, then 9 and 3 is not acceptable. And I've said it, and I'll still say it, and I believe it, is that 9 and 3 is acceptable for some people. And to your point, standards change. 9 and 3 after being 9 and 1 with Georgia Tech and NC State is not acceptable. Is it good when we look back on the annals of history and say they won 9 games? It was like it's an 8-win program. I always say they won 9, but I think what Mac was so fired up about on Monday at his press conferences is that he does not want the fact to be lost that they're 9 and 3. And I agree with that 100%. Carolina football to be 9 and 3, that's a heck of a season for Carolina football. It's just how they got there. And I think, John, and you can chime in here, I think how the sausage is made, how this sausage log was made is important here. And, NC State's a good team. People can dog on State all they want. That defense was legit, and they had a good plan. Like Longo said, it wasn't the same plan that Georgia Tech had, but Georgia Tech just outplayed them. And that cannot happen whether they're 9 and 1 or 8 and 3 or 2 and 9. I mean, that Georgia Tech team was not good. So I think it was a missed opportunity, but the opportunity still presents itself on Saturday. And maybe, and I want y'all's take on this, maybe playing with no expectations and no pressure is better for this team. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I listened to Drake May's press conference today, and he was talking a little bit about the pressure that he faces as a quarterback. He said something interesting talking about how human nature naturally comes in. And I think that maybe this team did feel a little bit of pressure the last 2 weeks, and now all of that pressure is gone. And I think that is going to allow this team to play freely. They've played some of their best football when they're in that sort of underdog position. And I think even though Clemson lost this past weekend, there are not a lot of people who are expecting very much from North Carolina. Whereas if they would have kept winning, this would have been essentially a college football playoff game, play-in game essentially, and there would have been tons of pressure on Drake May in this offense. So maybe they would play a lot better with all that pressure off. I think too, Ross, you referenced the offense and what's happened over the last few games for UNC. There was one stat that I wanted to bring in right off the bat here. This is UNC's red zone conversion percentage by month. In August and September, they scored on 92% of their red zone attempts. In October, they scored in 90% of their red zone attempts. And then in November, this month, they've scored in 68% of their red zone attempts. So I think that explains a lot of what we've seen this month as well. It's a UNC offense that has really just stalled out in the red zone these past few weeks, and that's what led to some of the results that we saw against Georgia Tech and NC State.
Yeah,
I mean
let me call a thing right here. Let me pop up something. Hold on. We're going to get this interactive. Dwayne Hamlet, It's a new name. I hadn't seen it, but appreciate you joining chat. Why ponder and cry over spilled milk? Move on. Carolina's playing football in early December. Literally just said that, and literally that's what Mac said over and over and over on Monday. Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, but I think journalistically, I mean, it's our job to kind of look back. You know, we haven't talked in this podcast since state, so like we're talking about it because it's kind of our job to reflect. We'll move on to Clemson here in a bit, but I think a good topic here is the standard. I think 9 wins. Everybody would have taken that. I think UNC in general, 9 wins, 10 wins is a great season. That's rare. And I think that should be the goal every year. It should be 8, 9, 10 wins. Down years should be 6 or 7. Average should be about 8. And you would hope you can get up to that 9, 10 win echelon every once in a while. So I think you'll look back at this as being a very successful season. But I saw a comment that 11-1 was so feasible, and that was so it was right there. And I'll show it right here. Table is set to be 11. Garrett Chapp. Wonder if that's his real last name. It was all set to be. I mean, it was awesome, and then a chance to go 13-1 or 12-2. So it's disappointing. And I think it's the disappointing part that the teams they lost to were just not, third and fourth string quarterbacks. Like it's like classic Carolina football. It's something always like that tends to happen. But they've been right on the edge all year. Duke, Miami, Virginia. I mean, they have been in close games all year, and it was bound to flip just by odds. And it happened against Tech, and then against in double overtime against NC State.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. When you look back, let me ask people in the chat: how many people remember Carolina was 11-1 in 2015?
I do.
I remember that as well. But what do people in the chat? But what do you remember most about that season? You remember the onside kick against Clemson. They lost that game, and you remember Baylor beating their butt. That's what people remember. The end of the seasons, and that is why. And we see where it went from there, from Larry Fedora and that team. It went 11-3, 8-5, I think, because they lost to Stanford in that bowl game, and then the bottom fell out. So that's my point. And to Ross, to the point you just brought up, you had it set up to have not just a better season than North Carolina ever has, to one of the best seasons in college football. And I just think it was lost opportunity. That said, none of it matters anymore. And none of it matters because Carolina faces Clemson on Saturday night in Bank of America Stadium. And people in the chat, and we could talk about this, and I don't know what y'all garnered from the players today, Ross, but the secondary for North Carolina is banged up, but Clemson hadn't really thrown it well. And so, I don't know how Carolina approaches this game on defense. They harp on the fact that they've been better later in the season. I mean, the numbers don't show that. Maybe the scoring defense in the fourth quarter, in the second half, and the fourth quarter show that, but the numbers certainly don't.
Well, the defense has done enough last 2 games, I think, to win. With 21 points to Georgia Tech, and then what was the state's final score? 30?
24 in regulation.
Yeah, 24 in regulation. So, I mean, that with the way that UNC's offense has been playing, that the defense has done enough, and made plays too, turnovers here and there, and missed opportunities too, missed chances for turnovers. I think, it'd be interesting to see if we get more Marcus Allen and Will Hardy on a big stage. Tony Grimes's and Storm Duck's and Cam Kelly's status is in question heading into Saturday night. But one thing that I think it's been a concern all year has been the pass rush, and I listened to Mac Bruce asked about that a lot on Monday. Tommy, I know you were there. He doesn't have an answer for it. They just can't get pressure on the quarterback. And it didn't help losing 3 starters. Didn't help losing Noah Taylor, Desmond Evans. But they're last in the ACC in pass rush. And teams have had success. Quarterbacks have success against UNC's defense over and over. So, I mean, you can't just say that DJU is not going to have me. He could have a great game against UNC. It's kind of what quarterbacks do.
Yeah, if he's hot. So looking back over the season, I think Carolina played 12 games. Keaton Slovis from Pittsburgh wasn't very good. And then the Virginia Tech quarterback, can't call his name right now, was not very good. Those are the only 2 quarterbacks that played below their quote-unquote norm against North Carolina. The rest of them I mean, I mentioned it to Chiswick Monday. I mean, Ben Finley talked about how he felt like he was on a camp out. He had so much time in the backfield to make plays. Um, I think this, and we'll talk more about the game plan on Thursday, but I think this is a game where you got to force DJU to throw the ball. And if he does and he lights up Carolina, like Mr. Hardy said in the chat, then it is what it is. But you just can't let Clemson run wild on them.
Yeah, I mean the 49 yards they held State to. We were covering a basketball game during that game too, so I was locked into kind of both. But I didn't know they held State to only 59 yards rushing. That's great. I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think they have the ability to do some things. Will Shipley is a different animal than any NC State running back, and State didn't really need to run it against North Carolina because Finley threw it, I think, 40 times and 29 for 40 or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see. But if I'm Carolina in this game, I'm selling out the farm to stop Will Shipley. And if they beat me passing, then they just do. John, you got any more of them stats you bring up?
Well, I was going to mention too with DJU, I think he is a great running threat. And UNC, we all know this. UNC struggles to defend running quarterbacks. I think he also brings a certain physicality to the running game that UNC will struggle with. Someone like Ben Finley, I think you just brought the comment up. He was sitting back there eating a sandwich on Friday against North Carolina's defense, but he was also a statue back there. He was not a very mobile guy on Friday. But DJ is going to present some other challenges for UNC's defense. He's going to be able to run the ball. I could see it being a little bit like a game that Riley Leonard had for Duke against UNC earlier in the season. And I think that's the thing that's going to give UNC the most trouble. I did have one stat in the positive column. There's been a lot of talk about all the young DBs this week, but I thought also Miles Murphy had his best game in a while. His PFF grade was 71.1, which is his highest grade since the Georgia State game early in the season. And also he generated, I believe, 3 pressures on Saturday, which was his highest since Florida A&M. So if you're looking for positive signs, there's another one in addition to all those freshman defensive backs.
And he's finally healthy. He was banged up for about 3 or 4 games midway through the season, and he has been noticeably better. I think against Georgia Tech. Before that against who was that against?
When he got
Wake.
hurt, or yeah.
No, just like the
he
last
played well
games.
against
Wake, Georgia Tech, and then State. So it's good to see him because he was supposed to have a great year, but I think he was just had an ankle thing that lingered. So I would expect him to be back next year. You never know now with transfers coming up December 5th. But he is a solid piece that they need to. Imagine him and Travis Shaw might be and Kevin Hester will be your interior lineman next season too. If we want to move on to Clemson here, I mean, I think a big thing that we kind of talked about, or we can't talk about, is I do think UNC has a little more motivation in this game. They're like you said, Tommy, they're coming in with not much to lose, a lot less pressure, and Clemson's not used to not playing for anything. They usually have the eye on the college football playoff. That's out the window. So they're playing for an Orange Bowl, which is below their standards, and I'm sure Clemson fans would say that, right? So it's kind of like when Alabama doesn't make the college football playoff, they usually lose that bowl game. Because they just they're not motivated. It's like not where they're used to being. And if they're not playing for a championship, there's lack of motivation to play as hard. So that might be a situation we could see. I mean, it's definitely going to be a factor. I think UNC is excited to play Clemson. I think it would be a huge win, like we've said. And the chance to play in an Orange Bowl, 2 out of the last 3 Orange Bowls, is pretty cool as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And you said a couple of weeks ago that I listened to all the press conferences, and yeah, unfortunately I do. But I also listened to Dabo Swinney on Sunday on the ACC championship game press conference, and he said they're going to be ready to play. There's a lot to play for. They have 5 goals every year. They still can reach 4 of them. But you're right. I mean, I think had Clemson beat South Carolina would be in more trouble than they might be right now, because then they'd have to set an example. But then again, maybe that creates more pressure. But I think I just think Carolina can play free with no expectation, and Clemson, we'll see what happens. But that's a great point because I remember Alabama, who did they play, like Utah or somebody like that in the Sugar Bowl.
They lost the Sugar Bowl. I don't think it was Utah, but I do remember it was the Sugar Bowl, and they got beat.
Yeah, and so there's that aspect of it. I don't think there'll be any problem for North Carolina getting up. I do worry a little bit about momentum. Mac always talks about momentum, and Carolina's offense. We mentioned that. I think defenses have the bottom line is if you can get pressure with 3, like NC State did and Georgia Tech was able to do, then it's tough to throw on 8 people. It felt like watching that game in Kenan Stadium on Friday. And I know my man Slagle sits up there near where I do, but from the angle we had, nobody was open. And if they were open, it was it was like the porthole window to throw in rather than the bay window to throw in for Drake May. And you could tell it. And then NC State tackled. And I think Clemson's secondary is the weak spot. I mentioned on the message board, and Ross, you wrote the article about all the ACC teams, is Clemson's defensive lines first and second team all ACC. And quite frankly, they probably all could have been first team if you wanted to do that. So that is going to be Carolina's thing. Let's talk about the ACC all-conference teams, Ross. Obviously, Drake May, all-ACC quarterback, Josh Downs, all-ACC wide receiver. Did Cedric Gray's appearance surprise you? Not because he hasn't been great, but because he plays on the worst defense in the conference or close to it.
Yeah, I mean, I did think about that actually, but he is leading the tackling by like 10 tackles. He leads the ACC in tackles by I think over 10 tackles. So I think a lot of voters look at stats because obviously they're not watching every game. And so they see, what linebackers leading the conference in tackles, and they vote for that person. There's 3 people that won first team all ACC linebacker, and Cedric Gray led the voters with 128 points. So no, I wasn't surprised. I think he's very deserving. Yeah. The defense has been better than in ACC play, like we said, like Max said, and he leads the ACC in tackling, and that's not easy to do. He's been healthy. He's been productive. Also 2 interceptions. Pass breakups, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries.
Yeah.
Had an unbelievable year.
Yeah, I listed the stats there in the article. So yeah, I wasn't surprised at all. If we can go through it here, I think second team was it just one guy, right? It was Josh Downs, specialist,
and Storm Duck.
And Storm Duck. Now, I think that was more surprising. The secondary's been pretty bad, but Storm Duck getting one of the 2 cornerbacks on the second team was good to see as well. He's had a great last couple games. Yeah, Josh Downs is all-purpose. Were you surprised there? Anybody, Tommy or John?
I mean, where's the all-purpose? Is it all-purpose first team? I'm looking, or is it just like
Josh Downs is all-purpose second team. Will Shipley was all-purpose first team.
Yeah, I mean, he had some good punt returns. I guess that's where your all-purpose gets from. To be honest, I thought he'd run the ball more, have some more rushes that would add sort of to that. But yeah, he did it all. I don't watch enough ACC football to know that if there were somebody else in there they could have put in there. But Downs is certainly deserving given everything he does. I tell you what, and you mentioned Storm Duck. Couple things here. One, Cedric Gray being all ACC linebacker. That tells me ACC people actually look at stuff rather than they don't go quite as deep as they maybe need to, but they go deep enough to be able to put a guy like Cedric Gray on the first team. I know the NC State fan base is irate that Drake Thomas is not first team. And quite frankly, and I'll piss some people off in the chat, he probably deserves to be up there somewhere, but he don't deserve to be above Cedric Gray, like they're saying. So that's a pretty cool thing. And then the fact that Duck is second team all ACC, A, it speaks to Duck, and B, it speaks to the voters actually paying attention a little bit because he did nothing for the first half of the season and really turned it on after Pittsburgh. Anything else in there you saw? I mean, North Carolina.
Did Drake Thomas not get any mention?
No, he's second team.
I thought he was second team as well.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, he's second team. Peyton Wilson is honorable mention. Isaiah Moore is honorable mention.
Yeah, Isaiah Moore could play.
Dax Holyfield is honorable mention, and Trenton Simpson is third team.
Yeah,
and
I
that
said second.
That was a big guy that
second
UNC recruited him.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Simpson just sort of gets lost in Clemson's defense, right? I mean, if he played for North Carolina, God, imagine if he played beside Gray and Eccles, but that's spilt milk there.
Is he a junior? Or is he a sophomore?
He's a junior.
Okay,
I think.
he would have been in the same class as Cedric Gray.
Yeah, so he can go. But yeah, just looking at the things at all the rankings, not as many North Carolina people as you would expect for them being 9-3, but not really anybody I can look at and say, well, they really missed that. You know what I mean? Antoine Green, third team, and Awesome Richards, maybe a second team guy, but a third team guy overall.
Cayman Rucker is one guy that I wrote. I had his stats written out. I thought he'd get honorable mention or something. But that's about it. Yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty fair. I don't know. Yeah, I don't watch much ACC. You know, you cover one team, you're there 2 hours early, and you stay in 3 hours late. That's 8 hours, 10 hours. You know, you're missing a football. So
yeah, just for the people at home too. Bryson Nesbitt, Power Eccles, and Corey Gaynor. Those were the three people who were honorable mention. We haven't mentioned their names yet too, but I was a little surprised, honestly, to see Power Eccles as an honorable mention All ACC linebacker. I don't know exactly how the voting works, how long the tail is there, what the cutoff is to be included. But I mean, from UNC's defense perspective, it would make a lot more sense to put Cayman Rucker higher than Power Eccles. But
it's different positions too. So
yeah, I'm not sure. And again, not sure how the voting works.
Fill out. I've never voted for this. I think every voter fills out a full first, second, and third team, and then they're given points based on where you fall. I think that's right. You know, Adam was a voter, and we would love to have him on the podcast to tell us.
Yeah, well, big time again. No, he's not. Yeah, that I will take that back. That's one surprise. Cayman Rucker not being even honorable mention, because good God, they got everybody in the conference basically listed honorable mention, and Rucker certainly. Hey, that could be some motivation for the young man. He's done everything for Carolina, playing jack, defensive end, everything else he's had to do. Anything else on the football side? And obviously, we'll talk more about it on the game plan. And Ross, you had a good conversation about ACC championship game with Schottmer, whose audio will be attached to this. And
yeah, I think the one thing to pay attention to is the transfer portal on December 5th, which is Monday, is going to be wild. We're already planning for it because there's going to be UNC players who enter the portal, and Mac's been very open about that. It's not like I'm revealing any secrets here. And then UNC will get some transfers too at some point to enroll in January or in June. So they're meeting on Sunday, and they've been meeting, bye weeks and at certain times, I'm sure, during the season, but final decision will likely be made on Monday, and they can enter the portal on Monday and start getting picked up by other teams. So it's going to be a crazy couple of days there as players leave. I think there'll be some surprises. I think, some starters may leave, some, backups likely to leave, players that aren't playing a lot. Those are the names you should look for. So stay locked in Inside Carolina on Monday, and I guess we can talk about it next Tuesday.
Along those same lines, speaking of player movement, is this the last time we see Josh Downs in a Carolina uniform? Obviously, you don't want to speculate at all, but
yeah,
you never know with bowl opt-outs and stuff. That's not me reporting anything. I'm just sort of wondering out loud there. This could be the last time we see him.
Yeah, and he could opt out of the bowl game. Players done it before, so he is expected to be a first, second round pick. So, we had Javante, Michael, Diami, and Chaz sit out the Orange Bowl last time. So who knows? But he's a little bit different guy. So he may, he has that dog in him, and he loves to play. So we'll see.
One thing you talked about the portal, Ross, and this is something, if folks haven't listened to Mack Brown's press conference, like I said, he got pretty fired up in the end about internet message boards and the like. But listen to him talk about NIL and about openly about NIL. And then you see a former Carolina commit that's gotten a crystal ball to a school down south out of the blue, just like going to a school out of the blue because allegedly and legally there's a big NIL package for him. It's just crazy all the stuff that they can do. I saw NC State announced, come do charity work, get 25 grand as far as their NFL NIL thing. And hey, you got to play the game. And Mac all but said it in his press conference is that, how do you say something without saying something? He said, folks got to pony up if they want to get a roster. And Ryan Day said it out loud, and Mac repeated it.
How
$13
about
million to keep my roster.
how about coaching contracts? Matt Rule, I'm looking at this now. In January 2030, he's gonna be making $12.5 million a year to coach at Nebraska.
You
This
know
is
where
the
he's going to
same,
be then? He's going to be on his couch somewhere.
well, probably because he's the same coach who got ran out of town coaching the Panthers. It's crazy. There is a lot of money in this game now, and it's just sort of part of it, both the NIL stuff that you just said, Tommy, but also coaching contracts and all that. That's going to be also coming into focus here during the coaching carousel.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable the money around. So what to look for before we go to break and come back and talk about basketball? You got the All ACC player or the Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, DPOY, OPOY, I guess Coach of the Year, all that stuff tomorrow. Offensive Player of the Year, Ross. Defensive Player of the Year, all announced tomorrow. So you got a lot of news. Be looking on Inside Carolina for that. Drake May obviously in the running for several of those, and then. Carolina gets ready for Clemson. I think they go down on Friday, treat it like a true road game, and Max got some availability on Friday. Ross, you going Friday to Charlotte?
Yeah, I'll be there for the press conference on Friday afternoon.
Yep, and then Inside Carolina Live from somebody's asking where the tailgate is. 1200 South Graham Street. Inside Carolina Live will be there from, I guess, 5 to 7 since the game's at 8. Come see us, be a part of the show, get in on some swag from the brewery over there, some swag from Inside Carolina, all that good stuff.
What's the brewery?
I can't pronounce it. It's BH. I'm sorry. It's Barani. Hold on. Look it up, and you can pronounce that stuff better than I can.
Ross, you're going to Indiana. You're coming back and then going to Charlotte basically a day later.
I'm not going to Indiana.
Gotcha.
Nope. Adam's got Indiana. And then Ross and them will be in Charlotte to take care of it. Hold on. I'm going to find the name of that brewery, and I apologize to them.
Ravahana?
Yes. Yes, there. And then we're in the back, that parking lot behind them. Inside Carolina will be set up on the corner, around the corner. Mari Brewing Company. 12.
Mari, okay.
And but it's a cool thing. So come be a part of that. Come check it out. Carolina's playing an ACC championship, so big deal.
Nothing says football like Mari Brewery.
Hey, nothing says football like tailgating with Inside Carolina, drinking some beers, and then walking over to the stadium for a game. Let's go to Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com because nothing says Chapel Hill like the legends at Johnny T-Shirt on Franklin Street. Take care of them. I saw all the Black Friday, all the Cyber Monday deals Johnny T-Shirt has, but you know what? Inside Carolina Premium subscribers get 10% all the time from Johnny T-Shirt. On top of those deals, take care of them. They take care of us. You get everything you need. Christmas gifts. I've got a son to pick up Saturday morning before heading to Charlotte. I'm going to go to Johnny T-Shirt, and I'm going to use the Inside Carolina Premium subscriber discount and get some swag for Christmas. Take care of them. They take care of us. They're great friends, alumni owned and operated. Always support those folks. They're you, so support them. They support us. Ross, you got your stuff? You got your Blue Shark?
Blue Shark Vodka. Check it out. If you're going to Charlotte for the AC Championship game, pick up a bottle of Blue Shark Vodka for the tailgate. The smoothest vodka in the world. Available in all 100 North Carolina counties. They're winning awards out of Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. Shout out to Connor Barth and the people at Blue Shark Vodka for their support of Inside Carolina Podcast. On the Beat Live, calling the shots and the scoop. Blue Shark Vodka, the smoothest vodka in the world. If you're tailgating with it, take a picture with the bottle and tweet at me. I'll retweet you. Blue Shark Vodka, check it out. Support local, support independent companies like Inside Carolina and Blue Shark Vodka. We have some national ads, and we will be back with On the Beat Live.
On the Beat Live. What time is it? Because I got to put the national ads in there. It's 9:34. Carolina basketball. Ross, first of all, tell me how was Portland, because I've never been to Portland. and I've always kind of wanted to check it out. But a lot of basketball teams out there, a lot to do. How was that trip for you guys?
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it was weather was kind of cloudy and rainy as you would expect. Did a lot of walking around, but I mean, if you were a college basketball fan, it was a great opportunity because there were 16 men's teams there. I guess 8 women's teams, 2 different tournaments for the women too, and UNC women won one side of it. But you could watch nonstop basketball. There were 3 different venues. It's all the men, or at least the 2 main venues were. It's the Moda Center where the Trailblazers play, and then next door is like this minor league hockey arena called Veterans Memorial Coliseum, where I think the Trailblazers used to play.
Yep.
And it's right. I mean, it's like you can bounce back and forth. It's like a 2-minute walk. Same little opportunity there, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of basketball. A lot of national reporters are there. They can just bounce back and forth. But yeah, it's a interesting city. It's beautiful in some areas, not so beautiful in some areas. Big, felt bigger than I remember. I went there 5 years ago, but it was good. I mean, other than the losses, I mean, we'll get into it, but I mean, the overtime game was crazy. It was an awesome game to cover. It was really fun to watch. It was a crazy game. I think it could have gone either way. I don't put much stock in losing that game because so long either way. UNC could have won that game. So yeah, some good teams played. I don't know, but
the Rose City, right? Is in Portland, Rose City?
Right. Yeah.
Bill Walton said it's Rose City because the weather is perfect for roses to go. Maybe that's the fact. The best Bill Walton, and I know you didn't hear it because you were covering it. The best Bill Walton line was, "How does one get a nickname like Puff?" And the other announcer said, "You'd probably know how you get that." Great low-key line shot at Bill Walton. Let's talk about the basketball team a little bit. Ross, 1-2. Portland was pretty good. They almost had Michigan State beat. I thought those guys played well. Watching that game, did you get any sense of what was to come in those next 2 games watching that? Because those kids shot the lights out in 3, and then other teams did as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially Alabama. Yeah, Portland was good, man. I don't think they were. I think it was a good team. They had some shooters. That big man was huge. That gave Baycott some trouble. The one guy was lights out. The second half, the other guy was really good. The names escape me. But this team definitely needs some work in certain areas. I do think they're missing Brady Manick more than a lot of people want to know. But I don't know. The bit. Hubert Davis keeps talking about using the bench, and he's not using it very much. Would be one takeaway from Portland. We're tracking Dontrez Styles. I mean, he only played like 2 minutes against Alabama. But these games were all close, and a lot of people are getting so crazy. I'm not too worried about this team. I think RJ Davis is the heart and soul. I think he played great. I think Caleb Love made some big shots. He shot the ball way too much against Alabama. They needed him to. And when Baycott plays bully ball, he's unstoppable. And I don't know if you want to ask. I don't know what y'all thought. You have a different vantage point than I do. Kind of rambling here, but John, what did you think about UNC in Portland?
Well, I'll start with the bench minutes. I think that is a really solid point there. I looked in the Ken Palm database. There are 363 teams in his database. UNC is second to last in bench minutes. There's Notre Dame, very last, and then there's North Carolina one right above. And that's odd. I mean, UNC has what looks like on paper a very deep bench. And this point has been made by a few people, so I don't want to, steal anyone's thunder. But it's often been talked about how Roy Williams would play a deeper bench at the beginning of the season, understanding that it would come with some lumps. There would be some, losses early in the season that UNC maybe shouldn't have, but that it would pay off in the long run. So far this season, UNC has not utilized its bench to the point that I would expect. This also happened last year, not just with the Iron Five in February and March, but really all season. You look at UNC's number in that same stat last year, and they're in the 300s as well. But I think it's really surprising that UNC hasn't used its bench more. To me, from the outside, an easy solution to that would be trying to stagger Caleb Love and RJ's minutes a little bit more and letting RJ run a bench unit with Tyler Nickel, playing next to him, or Caleb run a bench unit with Seth Trimble running next to him. I think there's different ways to do it, but thus far, Hubert has elected not to do that. And I mean, you saw how many minutes did Caleb play? 57 in that 4 overtime game. So the minutes are going to add up as the season goes along.
Looking at the stats, 7 games in. Listen to this, Ross. This is unbelievable. And I know how many times Hubert says he's going to play the bench. Caleb Love, and obviously the overtime plays into this, but Caleb Love's averaging 38.7, Armando almost 35, RJ over 36, Pete Nance 31, Leakey 34.5-ish, Trimble 11, Puff 20, and Puff in only 4 games, and DeMarco Dunn 9, who I thought looked all right. Dontrez Styles averaging a whopping 3.8 in just 4 games. That's not sustainable. I mean, it's just not. And I think when you start seeing guys get injured and get hurt late in games after they've played so much, I think that's a function of that. Now, anybody can twist an ankle at any time, but I think it just at some point you start getting worn out. But let me give you another stat, Ross, and then I'll cede the floor to you. Caleb Love has shot the ball 122 times in 7 games. Armando Bacot has shot the ball 67 times. Almost double. That's a problem. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Bacot is I think his scoring and shot attempts is a direct correlation to UNC's success. When he starts playing the bully ball down low, like he was really good against James Madison. That was his best game of the season so far. UNC was great. I mean, he is such a force when he gets the ball and shoots. I mean, like the Caleb Love stuff. I know people are going to be bashing on him for shooting so much. That's kind of who he is. I mean, he is a high volume shooter. He was efficient. I think was against Portland. I don't have all the box scores in front of me, but I think he had an efficient game in one of those games. But that's kind of what it is, man. He shoots a lot and he makes some of them. He makes some big shots, and he was a guy who was called upon to take some of those late clock shots in the overtime period. The one who he dribbled for about 25 seconds before shooting. It's kind of who he is. It's kind of what makes him great too. He has ultimate green light, and that allows for some bad shots, but also allows for some really good shots. To address John's point, yeah, it might just be Hubert Davis's thing not to play a lot of people. He has a 7-man rotation now, maybe 7.5 if you include DeMarco Dunn, who's playing more than I thought he would. So you got the starting 5, then you have Puff Johnson, who I thought was great. I saw it in the comments here. Puff Johnson was playing great against Alabama. I thought he was great on defense, had some opportune steals, turnovers, made a couple baskets, and then they bring in Seth Trimble as part of that rotation, and then DeMarco Dunn, and that's about it. I mean, he's even playing Tyler Nickel ahead of Dontrez Styles, which is very surprising to me. And so that's really all you see. Saw Justin McCoy a little bit, but he's not really part of the rotation. So I don't know. I think he just likes who he likes, and he rolls with him. We saw it a lot last year, and we'll see if that changes. But I think it might be a kind of a 7.5 rotation with the majority of the reps going to the first kind of 6 guys. I'm not too worried. I really am not about this team. I mean, look, I saw some comments about Pete Nance. He'd be the guy you'd have concerns with, but he had a big game again. When was his big game? Was that in Portland?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the 5 threes against Portland. And then he had some great defense, I thought, against Alabama. Surprised me with his perimeter defense late in the game when he was isolated on the guards. I thought he played pretty well. It's so early, man. It's a long season. This is a tough road trip. They could easily lose at Indiana tomorrow night, and they have to go to Virginia Tech Sunday. So we'll see. Remember where this team was last year too.
Yeah,
you think they'd be better, but there were some bad losses at this point last year too.
They look very similar to last year at this point in the season. And John, to your point earlier, Roy Williams would not intentionally sacrifice wins, but he would sacrifice wins to build depth. And I'm not sure Coach Davis does that. Looking at Pete Nance to that, and this is another thing that's interesting to me. Pete Nance, 8 for 13, hits 5 threes against Portland, goes 28 points. All right. He shoots 8 for 13 in that game from the field. He's got 6 shots against Iowa State and only 4 against Alabama. I think Hubert did say the man had a great first half earlier in the season, and when he played, if somebody's hot, you get them the ball. I don't, the shot selection, and John, I know you got something you want to do with shot selection. 36 shots is a lot. I mean, I can't. Obviously, Billy Cunningham, Lenny Rosenbluth, those guys before my time. But somebody said in the chat, it's the just dribble out the shot clock and then shoot a pull up or shoot a three somewhere. I just don't think that is sustainable unless somebody just makes a shot, and that's how you get to 4 overtimes. And granted, Alabama had opportunities too. Caleb Love is a mercurial player, and you live with that stuff because there are games where he goes nuts and shoots you to win. Duke in the Final Four being one, UCLA in the Sweet 16. And then there are games where he shoots you out of the gym, and the other day being one, and then Kansas in the championship being another. It is what it is. He could rein it in a little bit. He could be more efficient. But, it's kind of like this is what you get with him. I do think R.J. Davis is the leader of the team, but you can't have your two starting guards shooting 60 out of the shots. 60 out of 91 shots. I mean, that's
RJ was 8 for 24. It's not much better than 13 for 36.
You got Baycott and Nance with 16 total shots, and Love and Davis with 60. I mean, I don't. That you can't do that. You can't do that. But college basketball is a guard-led team, and Alabama made one more play, and that's what happens. The Iowa State game was a little bit more disturbing because people were talking about the defense, and Alabama had Sears make a lot of threes, but Caleb Grill for Iowa State goes for 31 with 7 threes. In the next game they played, he had like 1 point and no made baskets. So those issues are where it was concerning, especially when defense was the rock of their run last year. John, what you got?
I'm gonna take advantage of the YouTube format here. Let's see if I can pull this up. This I'll also have to narrate for our audio listeners. I want to make sure that if you're watching the YouTube, you can probably see this chart that I've pulled up. If you're listening on the audio, you obviously can't. But what I've pulled up here is this cool website. I'll put the link in the chat so everyone can look at it together after the stream is over. But it shows shot charts for all of UNC's basketball players here. So here you can see Caleb Love. You can see a lot of blue out here on the perimeter. Blue is below average when compared to college basketball. So you see here, Caleb Love is 0% from this area of the floor, and the Division I average is around 32%. So that's why that's blue. But it's kind of interesting. You can see some of the blue areas here beyond the arc where Caleb Love maybe hasn't had the hottest shooting start. RJ Davis, sort of a similar story, especially some blue in the mid range. You'd expect him to be a little bit better there because that's one of his strengths. So maybe as the season goes along, that'll turn more red. Red is good on this chart. And then you can see Armando Baycott, some red around the rim, but also some blue. So maybe not dominating as much as he should be. So this is kind of an interesting chart just to see something we can maybe track as the season goes along here. One more point too with Caleb Love shooting. I believe I can't pull up the numbers right here. Let me stop sharing. I believe he was a 26% shooter as a freshman, and then last year he was a 36% shooter from three. So I think it's going to be interesting to see which Caleb Love is going to sort of come to play this season. Is it more of that freshman year Caleb, who is the less efficient shooter? Or was it Caleb from his sophomore season where he was a 36% shooter and much more accurate? So that's another thing to watch.
That might be the coolest website ever. I mean, I'm looking at it now. Throw it in the chat. CBB, collegebasketballanalytics.com, and you can go to shot chart. I've never seen that before. That is cool. What gets me about what you just showed is the number of dots on Caleb and RJ's versus the number of dots on Armando's. And interesting on Caleb Love, he was terrible from two the last 2 years, and he's gotten a lot better from two. So he definitely improved that type of game, the little floaters and all. But, yeah, if folks didn't listen to Justin Jackson and Taylor Vipolis and their podcast, go check out what Justin Jackson had to say, because that man was the king of the floater and the king of the 3-pointer at times for North Carolina. Ross, you say you're not worried at all. Carolina goes to Indiana, then has Virginia Tech. I mean, what's reasonable to think on this season? I mean, I know we're early, but what have you seen that surprises you? What have you seen that does not surprise you on the basketball floor? I mean, you've seen a lot, so
look at their schedule right here. Yeah, man, I think they're just the assist numbers. I would expect to be a little bit higher with two really good guards. What was it, 14 assists in a 60-minute game. I think the offense is a little stagnant. They got to move it around more. I think getting him score more in transition. That's been I think I kind of felt that way last year too. That was the hallmark of Roy Williams' coach teams, and it does seem like they don't go as fast or play as fast or score in transitions much under Hubert. Less secondary break is certainly part of that as well. I would just like to see Armando become more dominant, and I think he will. He knows that. I think he's got a pretty heavy burden carrying this team. With a little voice crack there. But yeah, I mean, I think we got a small sample size. Got to see a lot more. This will be a big test at Indiana because they're banged up, man. That was a long game on Sunday, and they're traveling, and they're not sleeping in their own beds. They went directly from Portland to Indianapolis, and then Bloomington. So it's a long, long road trip. But ACC plays right on the corner. You got Virginia Tech and Georgia Tech, and then a little holiday break, and then Ohio State, Michigan, and then it's all ACC games from there. So the fluff of the season's kind of gone now, and it's lock-in time. So we'll see. There's not many breathers left on the schedule.
Let me pull up one question too, because I'm curious. This is from Phil Bowen. He asks, "What are we thinking about Armando's injury?" Ross, what did you hear after the game, and what have you heard this week?
Yeah, I mean, the update, we talked to Hubert Davis today, and he said everybody practiced. Everybody practiced today on Tuesday, so everybody's good to go on Wednesday. Against Indiana would be the assumption. He was pretty banged up on Wednesday outside the locker room. They had a couple players who were banged up. I know Leaky missed a little time, but he came back in with, I think it was an ankle injury, but it was a physical game, a long game, and they put the training staff to use for sure after that one. So a good question there. That would definitely impact the game if he wasn't able to go. But according to what Hubert said today, he's good to go, and they need him. Him and RJ, I think, are the two players they have to have. But yeah, I'd like to see Puff play more. I think he deserves a bigger role. I like where they went with. I mean, when Nance was out with foul trouble, I like the lineup they had with Puff at the 4, Armando, and then Caleb, RJ, and Leaky. I think that's a lineup they'll go to more, I believe.
I really like Puff Johnson's game and the way he took after the ball and dove and got it. That should have been the game-winning play there in that Alabama game. It just didn't work out. Love Puff Johnson's game. Love the way he plays. I mean, Seth Trimble looking like a cornerback out there, diving and deflecting the ball in the corner. I saw somebody say, can he play Saturday in Charlotte against Clemson? But, those guys, that's what you need from those guys. But Puff can be the shooter. Puff is the guy that gets the garbage rebound and makes the play. And look, let's give a mini shout out to Will Shaver. I mean, has he played it all? And then
first minutes ever.
And then he gets out there and he gets a basket or gets 2 free throws in a big-time game. Somebody mentioned in the chat Alabama. Alabama's a tournament team. That is the exact team that North Carolina does not need to see in the NCAA tournament, similar to a Baylor type. Those guys were big, tall, long, and all, but Carolina had their opportunities. I agree with you, Ross. It's early. There's some things that were going on last year that I see again this year that'll be interesting to see if they can take care of them. And it's a long season, but it doesn't get any easier. Anything else, boys? We get out of here early tonight.
That's all I got.
The Beat Live. John, you
Late
got
night.
any more fancy stats?
I might have accidentally blocked Bull Heel, so I want to send out an apology to him in an attempt to be swift against some of the bots. So Bull Heel, if you're watching,
You can say porn bots, John. It's okay to say it.
You said it. Not your words, not mine.
That's a new one, at least, too. That's a different one we usually see. Look, boys, I see them on Sunday mornings, so they're out in full force. But Bull Hill, you're on the message board as well. It was not intentional by
We
John Bauman.
apologize. We apologize.
Producer John was quick on the trigger, and you got caught in the crossfire. Ross Martin, John Bauman. It's been Inside Carolina, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Blue Shark. Appreciate you guys. Look for a post game. I promise you, I will have a post game after Indiana if I do it by myself. Hopefully, Dewey Burke will join me. Ross and I'll heading to Charlotte for Carolina and Clemson on Saturday night. Big week for North Carolina sports again. And USA beat Iran in World Cup soccer. I watched my first soccer game start to finish today. It's pretty impressive.
Ross, you a big soccer guy?
I watched the game today.
It was.
I'm not a huge soccer guy, but it's good to see. Who'd you cheer for, John?
Did y'all see that press conference before the game, like yesterday? That was pretty intense stuff. Soccer's intense, man. Those dudes, I don't like the flopping. I feel like I'm watching some college basketball at times. But anyway, impressive showing. Right. Let's get out of here. Ross is getting antsy. Let's go. Appreciate y'all joining us. We'll talk soon. InsideCarolina.com.